Caps find controversy in Montreal. Hellebuyck chased again, and the comeback Oilers have made it a series. All that and more on tonight's edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night with your host, Cam Stewart, Shukri Wright. Both Boston Bruins fans displaced somewhere else. And because the Bruins don't qualify for this kind of thing, we are qualified to talk about it. We're catching you up on the night that was in NHL Stanley Cup playoff action. And Shukri, it looked like we were kind of going to be scrounging for storylines here, but we got blessed with some good game fours, pivotal parts of the series. There was a ton of back and forth in this one tonight.
Thank God the Bruins were not involved in any of the shellangings tonight, because seriously, this would have been a night where I would have had to find a blowtorch and put it between my legs and hope I'm not on a rocket flying off somewhere. But man, what a night! And if you're a fan of a particular team, you have every right to want to pull out the blowtorch. But let's get into it, Cam, because I'm hot and loaded tonight because I'm ready to roll.
Ooh,
I'm ready.
We got a full 12 hours of Stanley Cup playoff hockey on this Sunday.
Hey.
And there is nowhere they do playoff hockey better, I hate to say, than Montreal. So let's take it there. Game 4, Canadiens and the Caps. This one got really feisty in Game 3. The goalies are hurt. There's fights on the bench. Logan Thompson back in this one. Pretty shocking. 5-2 is the final, but we know that really wasn't the score. I mean, Washington takes a 3-2 lead with 3.5 minutes left. They add a couple of empty netters, but this one does not come without some controversy. Let's first check in with our Locked On Caps host, Dan Holme, as the Washington Capitals take a 3-1 series lead.
The Capitals picked up a big win in game number 4 and are now just one win away from moving on to the second round. Hi, this is Dan Holme of Locked On Capitals. Well, the Capitals struggled in game number 3 as the Bell Center played a huge impact in the Canadiens' win, but the Capitals were more focused in this game and found a way to pick up a big win. And the big thing in this series of games has been the top-line performance. The Capitals' top line in particular, I'm talking Strome, I'm talking Anthony Beauvillier, combining for 16 points across 4 games. And physicality definitely played a role in this game, as well as Tom Wilson laid out Carrier, and that led to the Duhaime goal. And there's been a lot said about physicality in this game, but that definitely pushed the momentum in the Capitals' favor and what put them into the win column. This game also saw the improbable, and that was the return of Logan Thompson, who left the previous game to what appeared to be a fairly major injury, but surprise, surprise, was in the game tonight and played very, very well. The things that the Capitals will need to work on is the power play. The PK special teams needs to be more dialed in so the Capitals can move on to the second round with a win on Wednesday night.
And there's some soft selling there, Shukri, because this Tom Wilson hit might just have changed the series entirely. About 13 minutes left. He absolutely levels Carrier. That leads to Connor McMichael's goal, which ties it at 2-2. Mangiapane makes it 3-2, and the Caps walk out of there with a commanding lead in the series. Is that the way you saw it? I mean, that looked like one of those hits that just changes everything.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what's funny? As you were saying that, I thought about a particular moment that happened in 2011 in the Stanley Cup Finals, a particular hit that changed the entire tenor of a series. Even though this wasn't a Stanley Cup Final when it happened today, but that's what it kind of gave me that vibe. I mean, think about it. Tom Wilson, who I have on record on social media, I have called him a complete, for lack of a better term, not a nice term on the ice, but that hit on Alexander Carrier, you talk about, you can hear the noise and just how the attitude in the crowd just shifted completely inside the Bell Center, which led to the Capitals like scoring the tying goal, which was just like, oh my goodness, what a moment. And then on top of that, the physicality, it continued from game 3 and it translated into game number 4. But what I also want to say is this: I gotta give the Capitals credit here. They really did a better job of channeling their emotions into where it needed to be applied to, because of the fact that they got a little carried away and it burned them in game number 3. They made the adjustments in game 4. But I will tell you this though, the Capitals, they were able to kick it into another gear where in which that in that third period they needed a lot to go their way. They needed to regain control like in the third period. But I thought that the Capitals really, and I mean really, controlled about the expected goals on chances, but they really took the game to another whole other level in the third period. And I thought that most particularly the young guys, especially like McMichael, he was just outstanding.
Okay, Shukri writes, let's put it out there. Tom Wilson, his reputation precedes him. Dirty or clean hit?
You putting me on the spot here, but I'm not gonna say that it was a dirty hit. It was questionable, but not a dirty hit. I'm gonna be direct and say that it was not a dirty hit, but it was the kind of hit that definitely woke the Capitals up, because again, it just at that time I just felt as if that Montreal was, like they seemingly got comfortable in their own game, and you needed that sudden shift in momentum, and that was it. That was that particular moment. I just thought that ultimately that hit was clean. It wasn't dirty, but it was something that definitely tilted the ice in the Capitals' favor.
You know what I call that? Playoff hockey, baby.
Yes, exactly.
It looks bad. It's a contact sport. I mean, to me, it's shoulder to shoulder. It rides up a little bit, and there's no angle that I've seen that makes it look like forceful direct contact to the head. Obviously, doesn't leave his feet. To me, that is a hard hit, but it is a clean hit. I think Ian Boisvert of Locked On Canadiens might disagree with us.
Well, that didn't go as expected. Ian Boisvert of Locked On Canadiens here, coming to you immediately after the Canadiens lost Game 4 to the Washington Capitals by a final score of, I believe, 5-2, pending the last empty netter from Tom Wilson, who, of course, celebrated like he scored the game winner into an empty net. Look, I mean, Montreal just didn't have it at 5-on-5 in this game. They scored their only 2 goals on the power play. Their penalty kill was spectacular, and it needed to be. The officiating in this game was not doing the Canadiens many favors. Some of the penalties in this one were laughable. Dvorak got a high sticking call for a stick that never hit Christian Dvorak, or hit Pierre-Luc Dubois, that is. They ended up generating a 5-on-3 out of that. Montreal mercifully gets a power play immediately after that and scores. I think the big part of this game that I think will be overlooked when you look back at this on Hockey Reference years from now is just how poor the officiating was. I've been very reserved and tried to, I haven't blamed officiating much for how this series has unfolded, but it was especially poor in this one. It's not the reason the Canadiens lost, but it certainly didn't help that the Capitals got to spend most of the second period on the power play. Might be one game left on Wednesday, Game 5 back in Washington. Stick with us at Locked On Canadiens through that game and the rest of the summer. It's going to be an interesting one for the Canadiens, regardless of how this series turns out.
It wasn't just Ian Boisvert, by the way. Martin St. Louis, the Habs head coach, quote, "I'll be careful with my words, but it's hard to watch some of these calls," end quote. Let's go to Jakub Dobeš here, the fill-in goaltender for Montreal. Says, quote, "I don't want to point fingers. I never, ever do that. As a hockey player, I've never done it. I just hope we don't get these referees in Washington. That's it." Went on to say specifically about the Wilson hit, "I feel like it's going to be a whistle because they were in their defensive zone and far away, but I guess I don't really know the rules. I feel like it should have been a whistle. It was kind of a scary hit, but I guess the rules don't apply for everyone in this league." Ooh. You said it before we heard from Ian, Shukri, like Washington, that's a team that's been there and done that, a core that's been there and done that. They channeled it the right way. Montreal, still crying about it in the postgame. This is a young team. They're going to be here for a while. This is the first bite at the apple for them. But it feels like this series might be over because of the way they're responding to it.
I think so. And, sometimes the battle is won in the mind before it's won on the actual battlefield. And in this case, the battle was won in the mind by the Washington Capitals. Because to me, as much as the Canadians and the fans, they want to complain about the refs and so forth, how about the fact that they had absolutely no answer for what Washington Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry did in terms of playing the line chess game? Zero. And I'm gonna get into it here, because one of the things that I really like what he did in particular was that he really made it a point to finding that sweet spot in terms of how he had that top line of Dylan Strome, Alex Ovechkin, and Anthony Beauvillier. And so, because in Game 3, they had no answer for Nick Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky. Zero. Mm-hmm. But in this game, the Strome line was far more better, and it was not. It wasn't a coincidence that it didn't see as much time against the Suzuki line, but it definitely was a part of it was because of the amount of power plays too. And I will also say, in conclusion to that, I also do think that ultimately, one of the things that I think the Montreal is going to have to look at going into game number 5 in Washington is that, hey, they've finally figured things out on the power play. They've gotten better as the series has gone on. But if you're the Canadiens, you got to be more concerned about the fact that in terms of physicality, outside of Josh Anderson and another player whose name I'm blanking on at the moment for the Canadiens, they haven't really been able to match the physicality of Washington. Because remember earlier on, Ovechkin, he was flying around on the ice like he was some sort of missile.
Yeah,
I mean, no pun intended, but that's what he was doing.
Yeah. Big time, man. And that's been a physical series. It has gotten obviously to the nth degree up in Montreal. By the way, power play goals for Slavkovsky and Caulfield in this one, and they need to go and find one on their opponent's ice to keep their season alive. Let's talk about a couple of series where the guys really like winning on home ice. The Edmonton Oilers really needed to dig deep to avoid falling down 3-1, and it was a dandy up in oil country. That is coming up next on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, let me ask you a question. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track of that. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, okay? It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So do me a favor. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Let's send you as north as we can in this league. LA and Edmonton. It was a crazy first couple of games, Shukri, with LA taking advantage of that home ice advantage, going up 2-0. They really outplayed Edmonton for most of the game on Friday, but the Oilers get a 7-4 win with a couple of empty netters, and they were not the stronger team. The Oilers were not to start this game as well, but they rally late. Bouchard, 2 goals in the third period, including one with 28 seconds left. Darcy Kemper is standing on his head in overtime of this one, but Leon Draisaitl, his first career Stanley Cup playoff overtime game-winning goal, and all of a sudden, Shukri, we have a 2-2 series going back to LA. We did not see this one coming.
Not at all. You know the old adage, Cam, you don't poke the bear.
I've heard it.
Sometimes when you have a team who is as good as they are on the power play, that's number one, and for surely on 5-on-5, how many opportunities are you going to give this team to just continue to stay close enough and strike at the right time? That's exactly what happened. And in terms of the Oilers, you got to give them credit, because they continue to just fight. Even when things look bleak early on, especially the first 2 periods, the Kings were just a better team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, like Trevor Moore, Kevin Fiala, like they were just flying up and down the ice, and as well as just creating like scoring opportunities and making the most of it. But that third period, I thought the Oilers played arguably their best period of this series. Yes, even better than the third period in game number 3, in my opinion. So I would even take it a step further and to say that this is part of why I have personally been such a big fan of Evan Bouchard, is because of the offense he brings as part of his game. And you saw it with the 2 goals that he scored in the third period. And he was a big reason why they were ultimately able to come back and tie this game up. And I've said it before in a previous episode that they needed someone on the back end to step up in the absence of Matthias Ekholm, and Bouchard has been that guy. So for Edmonton, this is huge. They have not played their best hockey at home in all 6 periods on home ice. I should say 7, but now they're going back to Southern California with the series tied at 2, and really anything is possible now in this series.
It was a downer, though, for our friend and Locked On NHL Game Night host Eddie
God.
Garcia of Locked On LA Kings. The Kings absolutely throw this one away. Let's hear what Eddie's reaction was to that.
For the second straight game, the Kings play not to lose. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. The LA Kings had a 2-0 series lead heading to Edmonton. They held a 4-3 lead heading into the third period of Game 3, went into a defensive shell, tried to protect the lead, and ended up losing. Fast forward to Game 4, the Kings held a 3-1 lead heading into the third. Once again, just tried to protect the lead. They end up allowing 2 third-period goals. The last one with 29 seconds left, the Oilers goalie pulled for the extra attacker. They tie at 3-3. We go to overtime, where Edmonton eventually scores and wins it 4-3. The Kings were clearly the better team in the first 2 periods of game number 4, but instead of continuing to play the way they played the first 2 periods, they played not to lose. Edmonton kept the pressure on, got more shots, and eventually got the goals they needed. Kings goalie Darcy Kuemper deserved a better fate, turning aside 44 of 48 shots. And while it certainly feels like the Oilers have all the momentum after 2 straight come-from-behind home wins, the reality is the series is tied 2-2. The Kings have been dominant on home ice all season, and if they just win their home games in the series, they will advance. But there is no question the Game 4 loss was a big missed opportunity. For more, check out the latest episode of Locked On LA Kings.
This thing really looked like it was over at 3-1 when LA took their 2-goal lead. And what I think is really interesting is Evan Bouchard's in the middle of that one too. It was off of one face-off in the offensive zone. The whole crowd thinks he's just going to blast it. The Bouch blast. He tries a deke. It's stolen off his stick. Little alley-oop pass. Fiala scores. It's 3-1. The next 2 times, he does not try to deke. And both times it ends up in goals. They were both Bouch blasts. The old like Johnny Rocket from back in the day. Lets it go, and they both go in. One's off a skate, one with 30 seconds left. That's what you got to do. Put pucks on the net. But I like what Eddie said in there. Almost a prevent defense, Shukri. I think that's what undid the Kings in this one.
Honestly, I want to first start off by saying that I can hear the sadness in Eddie's voice, as you all know who listen and watch the show. Like I work with him like typically on our schedule basis, but I can hear the sadness, and I understand why. Because the Kings, for lack of a better term, they play not to lose, and I agree with that sentiment. And this is something that we talked about even before we started recording the show. And I said, one of the worst things you can do in hockey is play not to lose. And that's exactly what they did. Like, I just felt as if that for most of the third period, they were playing on their heels. But I will give the Edmonton Oilers credit here, because if you noticed in that third period, I think the singular biggest reason why the Oilers came back was because of the line changes that the head coach Nabok made during the second intermission. And this was the changes that I saw. Draisaitl and Corey Perry moved up to Connor McDavid's line. And Perry was huge in this game, by the way. Yeah. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Hyman, who were playing on McDavid's line, they got moved down to the second line. And that shuffle worked. Yeah. And it worked to absolute perfection. And I think that when you have the kind of fortitude to make that type of change, definitely, it pays dividends. But their inability to hold leads for the Los Angeles Kings is problematic. And if they lose this series, it will not be because of lack of talent, but their inability to hold on to leads remains extremely problematic.
Big time. By the way, we got 2 more games to go over, by the way. 2 more games to go.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you.
We've got a hat trick in there. We've got the President's Trophy winners on their heels. What is wrong with Connor Hellebuyck? That's next on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, if you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and those better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller for longer. Personally, I love the no shells one. Perfect little grab and go snack for these busy NHL game nights that we're going to have for the next 2 months. The in-shell options, they're a classic too. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, you've got a busy schedule, and Wonderful Pistachios are the snacks that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Coming back to you on Locked On NHL Game Night, Shukri writes, I'm Cam Stewart. And Shukri, we had to go down to St. Louis. Winnipeg looked so thoroughly dominant the first 2 games, not winning, 6-1 or anything, but looked definitely the better team in the first 2 games. Down in St. Louis, it's a different story. All Blues in this one, 5-1. To me, the story of the game is with the Jets, but we will start with the Blues. They won this thing. Little 3-goal onslaught in the last half of the second period, and all of a sudden, the game gets away from them. Haley Taylor-Simon of Locked On Blues is ecstatic after evening the series.
And just like that, the series is tied for the St. Louis Blues with their 5-1 victory over the Winnipeg Jets. I told you all that the Blues were going to do some good at home, and I have all these Winnipeg haters saying the Jets are going to beat the Blues in Game 4. Meanwhile, the Blues were able to hold the Jets to only 1 goal, and Connor Hellebuyck got pulled for the 2nd straight game. Jordan Binnington looked phenomenal. The Blues looked tremendous, except that first frame. Like, the last 30 seconds is fine, but, that was iffy. However, they played good hockey today, and now it is back to Winnipeg to look to take the series' lead. Let's go Blues.
If you needed any evidence that Haley was watching the game, just listen. But I'm very happy.
I couldn't stop smiling the entire time because I'm like, yeah, the game was on in the background and I could hear.
Haley always gives us some great emotion. That's what we want, right? That's what we want out of these shorts. And I know, Shukri, for you, that the big talking point was how much the defensemen were involved for the St. Louis team. They needed to step up in particular, and they had a hand in everything in that Jim Montgomery offense.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought this up because we were talking during the game. And this was a big point that I was trying to drive home was the Blues D has now become like an additional forward on the ice, if you will, in terms of the offensive production and the contribution that they've given in these last 2 games, which I think is the biggest reason why the Blues are now back in this series. I mean, remember Game 3, Cam Fowler had a 5-point night.
Yeah,
He set a franchise record in Game 3 for most points ever by a Blues defenseman in a Stanley Cup playoff game. Today, in game number 4, I mean, my goodness, Colin Parayko and Jake Neighbours, they were absolutely the studs in this game, and I thought that it was just more indicative of the fact of the system that they play, in which that under Montgomery, the D are they allowed to jump into the play, contribute offensively, and I thought that the Blues really took advantage of where the Winnipeg Jets got caught flat-footed. And for me, where they got caught flat-footed was not knowing how to defend in front of Connor Hellebuyck in terms of when the D jumped into the play. And you also saw the moment where Justin Falk, even he contributed offensively as well.
Yeah, he had
and
a
it
goal.
was just he had a goal in this one, and it was just like Winnipeg has got to figure some things out. One of which is Connor Hellebuyck, we'll get to in a moment.
Yeah.
But also, I think the bigger question for Winnipeg is systematically something has gone awry. And I don't think it's just the shift in scenery. I think it's systematic in terms of whatever Scott O'Neill has decided to draw up in Winnipeg, these last couple of games, it hasn't worked. And you got to make the adjustment for Game 5 going back to Winnipeg.
I feel like we need the Charles Barkley meme here. Like, we need to start a dialogue again.
Yeah.
Again, our
You're not wrong.
of we need to talk about Connor Hellebuyck. He is pulled again in this one, second straight game. That's only the second time it's happened in his career that he's had back-to-back games of getting pulled. So Cromrie goes in there. A 744 save percentage in 2 games in St. Louis. Just horrid stuff. And look, you said it in there. Winnipeg has been out of sorts as a team, and I think that's the excuse that we've used for years with Hellebuyck in the playoffs. This is by far the strongest team he's had. But like St. Louis was kind of reeling going into this postseason after the winning streak had been snapped. They're a scrappy team. They're not a very talented team. I wouldn't say St. Louis is one of the toughest barns to play in the entire league, and that's coming from a couple of Bruins fans who have gotten their hearts ripped out by that team. But what is going on with Connor Hellebuyck?
I want to think that it's mental. I really do, because I can't think of the last time we've seen a goaltender who has looked dominant in the regular season, but in the postseason, he's a complete utter shell of himself. For me, it's hard.
And on the flip, by the way, Jordan Binnington is the exact opposite. He's balling out again. 4 Nations, 2019. Now he's back again.
And deeper into the bigger the games, the higher he elevates his game. And this is why, like, right now, I'm not surprised from what I've seen from Jordan Binnington, especially in these last couple of games at all. It's like the deeper you go into these playoff series in particular, the better he gets. But in this particular case with Hellebuyck, and this is what I talked about with Eddie, the concern that I have in regards to on his record in the playoffs, especially when the deeper you go into the playoffs, it gets worse. And I don't understand, like, in this particular series, like, he's getting beat on shots that he really shouldn't be getting beat on, but it's happening. And it's something that I can't help but to wonder, if you're Winnipeg, what can you do to help get Connor Hellebuyck's confidence back? Because he doesn't look like the surefire Vezina Trophy winner that he's going to be, because let's face it, he's going to win the Vezina come June. But this is problematic. This is concerning if you're Winnipeg, and if you're a Blues fan, you're ecstatic. It's like, yeah, keep leaving him in there. Don't make any goals.
We want Connor. Like they took it from what the King said with Stuart Skinner last week. Oh man,
great comp.
It's tough. It's tough. But Winnipeg, they've looked really good on home ice. They have home ice advantage in this one. But that series now at 2-2. Down in the East, 3-1. The Carolina Hurricanes take care of the Devils in this one. Devils make it a game. I mean, Carolina was up 3-0. Andrei Svechnikov scored 52 seconds into the game, 42 seconds into the second period, and added an empty netter for the hat trick. He's the only Carolina Hurricane / Hartford Whaler to have a playoff hat trick. He's now done it twice. So it was 3-0. Devils pull it back to 3-2. Squib goal in there and then an empty netter. And this one is a 3-1 series lead for Carolina. Predictably, I would say their only faltered the double overtime loss. Let's hear from Zach Martin of Locked On Hurricanes for his reaction to his team's commanding lead.
And with that, the Carolina Hurricanes are up 3-1 in this series after a hat trick by Andrei Svechnikov. Now on Tuesday, the Hurricanes are looking to win in advance to make it to the second round once again for the 7th straight playoff. Tough day for Frederik Andersen getting knocked out of the game. Hopefully isn't too serious. But hey, Pierre Kachekov came in, gave up a goal on the second shot, but shut the door the rest of the way. Great total team effort to bounce back from that double overtime loss. Now they look to take care of business on Tuesday, back at home at Lenovo Center, as they look to clear out this series in 5 games. Should be an interesting one. And hopefully Freddie isn't out for too long. If not, at least you got Pierre Kachekov, who's going to be having a very big game coming for up on Tuesday. Definitely give me some fireworks.
So Timo Meier knocks out Freddie Anderson. Rod Brindamore was incredulous about not having a call. I don't think there was a call in that one. It was weird. It was definitely contact. I think Freddie Anderson sold it a little bit. Kochetkov comes in, gives up a gross goal to Timo Meier, a terrible goal. But like Zach said, kind of shut the door after that. I want to get your take, Shukri, on this Hurricanes team. I have been so anti-Devils going into this, like especially on a Sunday, anti-Devils. But I just didn't believe in this team after the injuries. I'm being proven right to the point where I'm looking at Carolina of, are we getting kind of a false advertisement here on what the Hurricanes can do if they take this thing out in 5 games?
I don't think you're getting like false advertisement. You're getting exactly what was advertised for the Carolina Hurricanes when the Stanley Cup Playoffs began. Like, you have seen like the depth of this Hurricanes team on full display, and even though they have their concerns in regards to the status of Freddie Anderson for the remainder of this series, thanks to the collision they had with Timo Meier in this game, I think they will be a-okay. And I think that also because of their depth and the way that they play defensively, like, I do think that they're just as good as probably as good as any other team in the NHL in terms of on defense and allowing obviously scoring chances and so forth. But I will say this too as well. I think like seeing Andrei Svechnikov like step up huge today in terms of like offensively getting the scoring from your back end, what was really important, considering that for, let's face it, for much of this game, you really didn't get a whole lot outside of your D. Obviously, Brent Burns also scored as well, all the other defensemen. So to see the D and the depth of the defenseman core for the Carolina Hurricanes, for them to score, to jump in and contribute offensively, I think it was huge. And I think it goes to show you just how deep this team is.
Speaking of that D stepping up, look, I am the conductor of the Jacob Slavin hype Zamboni.
Yes.
And that play he made, I think back to the Connor McDavid one that tied game 1 against the Kings, but I think the play that Jacob Slavin made is the best play of the playoffs so far. He forces a turnover, he bats a pass out of midair, then like goes around the guy with it, like bats it around the guy we just took it from, and then scores from no angle to make it 2-0 Carolina. Still, even with how much we've been turned on to Jacob Slavin since the Four Nations, still the most underrated defenseman in the league. The guy is an absolute wipeout. He's so good. Do you give Jersey any chance?
None, zero. And also like and part of me for leaving out Jacob Slavin, but it also proves my point yet again. The D core for this Carolina Hurricanes team saved the day.
Yeah,
like they scored what 5 of the 6 goals that they scored. I mean, my goodness, it was one of those things where like they basically scored all 5 goals. The hat trick by Svechnikov, and as well as like obviously like Jacob Slavin scoring in this game as well, and Brent Burns also chipping in as well. But man, it's over. It really is over, because also for me, if you're gonna beat the Carolina Hurricanes, you need the special teams to be firing on all cylinders. And the Devils' special teams has certainly struggled mightily, and they cannot afford to have its power play go into a slump, and it's certainly slumping right now.
Caps and Hurricanes make it 3-1 in their series. The St. Louis Blues and the Edmonton Oilers protect home ice and make it 2-2. They say the series doesn't start till someone else wins on the opponent's ice. Those series haven't even started yet as we go to Game 5, but that is the night that was in the NHL during the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell if you're on YouTube so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing here and wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network a part of your daily routine. And remember, you can join us 7 days a week for all the NHL scores and storylines from your local experts and the guys like us. Shukri writes, I'm Cam Stewart. That'll do it for us tonight on Locked On NHL Game Night.